Hey guys, welcome back to Heritage Hollow Homestead. Today I am in planting and seed starting mode for fall. Yeah, I know it is the middle of July, it is super warm out, and the last thing on your mind right now is probably pumpkins and sweaters and fall leaves, but it is past time to start planning your fall garden. Um, I really had intentions of even doing this about a week and a half ago, and then life just has been busy, so I'm just now getting around to it. But today I am starting my fall seeds, and I want to talk to you about which seeds you can grow in fall, how to plan your fall garden, because this is where things get a little tricky, and some tips for those fall seeds because they germinate differently than seeds that you grow during your spring and summertime. Some of them do. Alright, so let's get right into it. Okay guys, so first of all, if we're going to talk about fall gardens, and if you have never grown a fall garden before, I want to encourage you that now is a great time to start planning to plant something in your garden for fall. You know, where I live, the popular thing is to plant your corn, your squash, your tomatoes, all of your summer crops, and then once those come to harvest, gardening season is over. However, if you only grow that one in that one time frame of planting crops, you are missing out on all sorts of good things. You could, if you plant a fall garden that carries over into the winter many times, you could be doubling or tripling the amount of produce that you're getting all out of the one garden spot. So this is especially helpful if you are growing in a small area, which I grow in mainly raised beds, and so I want to take full advantage of that area and maximize how much I can grow in that one space. And the best way I have found to do that is to use up every single day of my grow time available, which means from planting from the very first day of the season where I could possibly get something to start to grow in early spring, things like kale and spinach, things that have overwintered all winter, all the way up into past my last frost date when I am going to be growing frost hardy crops. Okay, so really what I've been able to do is extend my grow time from about the first week of March all the way through last year, or well, this year. On January 1st, I was harvesting cabbage and broccoli, and even beyond that into February, I was still harvesting out of my garden. They weren't really growing a lot, but it was basically just sitting out there, like using the garden as a little fridge to keep my produce healthy and in good keeps, because we don't get severe freezes here except for once or twice a year, and that's usually in late February and March. I was able to even still be harvesting things like kale and some cabbage even into February, and then I have a break, and then beginning in March I start to plant some of those same crops back again, and on we go. And I accomplished some of that by using row covers and just trying to time things well and starting seeds indoors before it's actually time to plant them out. And so that is why I'm planning and starting my seeds for fall right now. Obviously it's hot and I still have a huge summer garden that is just bursting at the seams. I've been canning every single day, but I know that eventually, and sooner than later, most of the crops that are in my garden right now, those are going to come to a halt, and it's going to be time. They're just going to be done. Actually, my squash and zucchini are already done. My corn will be harvested this next week. My last of my potatoes will be harvested next week. I'm going to start to have these big empty spaces in my garden that would just sit there, or I can go ahead and start seeds and have things ready to immediately plant back as soon as those empty spots come available, which is what I want to do, so I'm not wasting any space or any time. And I held up earlier this little cute pumpkin. I have lots of pie pumpkins that are all ready. They've come to harvest. I'm about to can these up. So I did plant a lot of pumpkins early on in the season. I planted them when I planted my squash and my zucchini. And they have come to harvest nicely. And they were growing like underneath my corn because I had that extra space. And so I went ahead and planted them. So it doesn't really matter to me when these particular little pumpkins come to harvest because they are going to be canned. So I'm not using them to decorate with. It does feel a little strange to be harvesting pumpkins in July, but that just gives me more time to get these canned up and have time and space to grow either another round or something else in their place. So in order to use up all that all of your grow time in your area where you live, the first thing you need to find out is your first frost date, and that is going to influence everything that you start from seeds right now and plant out, because that is going to tell you how many days you have until the first frost comes, and that's going to help you be able to gauge how much time you still have to grow each individual plant that you're wanting to start. So right now, for where I live in zone 7, we're kind of in between a zone, kind of in a weird area here. Zone 7A and B, I'm right on the line. There are people less than 10 miles from me that are zone 7A. We're technically 7B, but our weather kind of fluctuates, so we're just going to say zone 7. Right now, I have approximately 100 days until my first frost comes, and that's a guesstimate. It could come sooner, it could come later. It's been happening a little bit later, a little bit after Halloween, but we're just going to go with that as a way to start to plan things out. So knowing that I have 100 days until the first frost comes is going to help me plan out what I still have time to plant, especially starting from seed. And I'm also going to plant and plan for what the least risky plants are to plant during that time frame, and for me to get a harvest out of my space. And I want to plan to plant the most of my low risk or frost tolerant plants. That's what the majority of my seeds that I'm about to start, those are going to be in that category. And then I'm going to start a few seeds of things that I know they're not going to last. Once one frost comes, I know it's going to kill these plants. That's things like squash or zucchini, beans, trying to think of what else, cucumbers. I know that I'm not going to be able to carry those on past my first frost, so even if it comes early, I'm just going to plant a few of those. Okay, so having said that, I know based on my first frost date that the Old Farmer's Almanac gave me. I did that by just searching at my zip code. It tells me when my first frost date is, and then it said like October 28th, I believe. And so I just did, hey Google, how many days until October 28th? And it told me approximately 100 days. It's that easy. That is how you can find out how many days you have left to grow, okay? So now let's talk about what seeds I'm going to start. Let's start with the seeds I'm going to be starting. These are a second planting of these, and these are going to be my more high-risk plants to plant. I have plenty of time to get a harvest from them, but I know that they're going to slow down and maybe produce a little bit less when it fall and it gets cooler and the days get shorter. So those are, for me, I'm going to be starting cucumbers. I don't think that you can even see that. And I'm going to be starting squash, yellow crookneck squash, and black beauty zucchini. So I have harvested, honestly, probably a couple of 100 pounds of squash and zucchini. In one way, I'm just even questioning whether I want to start anymore. But I want to start a few. I had like 35 5 squash and zucchini plants. So you can imagine how many of those I have. And that worked out great. It got hot, it rained a ton, it killed those. So I'm just coming back with a second sowing of these. And I'm only going to plant a few. I'm not going to take up as much space as I did before. Squash and zucchini take about 60 days to put on a harvest. So I know I have plenty of time to at least get one harvest, but I will probably get a whole month's worth of squash and zucchini before those start to be affected by the cooler weather. Same thing with this is a marketer cucumber. My cucumbers are still putting out a ton of cucumbers. I've harvested hundreds and hundreds of cucumbers so far. I've canned more pickles than I would care to admit. I've given away bags full of cucumbers, sold bags full of cucumbers. It's crazy. But I am going to go ahead and start a few cucumber seeds, and these are also going to be something that takes about 60 or 70 days to come to harvest. And so if I start them now, I will start to get more cucumbers right around the time that the last of my cucumbers I have in my garden now are officially done for. So this is just going to kind of carry me over a little further into the fall of having those fresh eating cucumbers. Let's see here, something else that would be you would be right on the edge of whether you have time or not, and this depends on where your grow zone is. If you live in 8 or 9 or 10, you have plenty of time, but for 7 or higher, you are quickly running out of time to plant pumpkins. Okay, so I have a Connecticut. This is an heirloom pumpkin. We have this pumpkin, which I will be growing for decoration and to can. And then also I'm going to start a second round of these small sweet sugar pie pumpkins. These came to harvest fairly quickly, in about, it says 100 days, but mine came to harvest sooner than that. So I am going to start a few more of those. Those are kind of a risky one to start or not to start, because sorry, they're working on the road and it keeps distracting me. Because you could be cutting it really close to your first frost date, like these right here. Say that they take 100 days to come to maturity, and I have 100 days until my estimated first frost date. So will I get any pumpkins of these before my first frost date? It's cutting it very, very close, so I'm not going to plant a lot of these. I'm actually not even going to plant these, I don't think, in any of my raised beds, because I may plant them somewhere else, because I just don't want them taking up any extra space, because this is very risky. So I'm not going to take up a ton of space with my pumpkins or any other type of gourds that you may want. These little ones, however, they have a maturity date of 90 days, so that might be a little less risky if you're just wanting to grow for fun. These my kids just want to grow. We'll probably trellis those in some shape, form, or fashion. Alrighty, so those are my more high risk plants that if I start them right now, second round of them, even corn, I technically have time to plant another round of corn, because I have 100 days. My corn comes to harvest in 90 days, but because it does get very cool here in October, sometimes that slows down how fast the corn will grow. Corn loves the heat. I'm not even going to waste my space. I've got hundreds of ears of corn that I'm about to harvest this week and that I've been harvesting from. I don't really need any more corn, so I'm not going to plant any more corn, but you could, but it is a high risk. It would be risky. Tomatoes are another one. If you went and bought tomato starts, or if you took clippings from your tomato plants that you already have growing, which I have a video about that, and propagating free tomato plants. If you took clippings and you planted those and started rooting them right now, you technically have time to grow, possibly to grow a whole second round of tomatoes. That's risky for me because I only have 100 days. But if you lived in like zone 8 or 9, definitely have time to do that right now. 7 or lower, very risky. Let's see here. So those are some of my more, and peppers. Peppers would also be, I think you're just out of time unless you live in like 8, 9, 10, where it's very hot. And then you could start a round of peppers right now. But for me in zone 7, I think my time has just passed. Look at that huge groundhog. There's a huge groundhog running across the road. I'm glad he's going away from me in my garden. Okay, so on to low risk, which means I have a high probability that I'm going to get at least a couple harvests from these between now and my first frost date. Those are going, and this is what I want to be planting the majority of my beds with, and those are going to be the very first thing that I've got to get started. If I don't start anything else today, I have to get these started, and that is my brassicas. Grow fantastic up until Thanksgiving, or sometimes even my cabbages held up till the first after Christmas, into the next year, like into the next January. But they take a very long time to get really going, and then they grow very slow when the days get cooler. So I have Brussels sprouts, I have some different cabbages, cauliflower, and broccoli, and those are all seeds that I'm going to start today because they take about 90, some of them to even take over 100 days to come to harvest. Let's see if it says here. I don't think that this says. So the cabbage could possibly come to harvest sooner, but as the days get cooler, they are going to take longer to grow. So I'm starting these seeds now so that they will have plenty of time to get up and going and have a nice start. Something else that I am going to be growing quite a bit of is going to be, if I can find them, here we are going to be a second round of bush beans. Okay, my bush beans always come to harvest much faster than my pole beans, and I have a garden full of bush beans and pole beans right now. They're just starting to slow down and kind of get stressed from the heat. It's been our temps have been in the very high 90s with heat indexes of like 110 almost every day for the last month, maybe longer than that. It's been an unseasonably hot June and July, and so my beans are really slowing down, feeling the stress of it, along with we haven't had a lot of rain. So I'm going to start these 60 days from now. I will have a whole new crop of bush beans everywhere. That's going to be great, and I will have plenty of time to get 2 or 3 pickings from these bush beans. So I'm going to start a lot of those. I think I'm going to go ahead and start. My friend has purple whole peas. I've never tried those before. I think I'm going to grow a bed of those, and I need to get those started soon. And I am going to start right now my little Marvel peas. These are the sweetest, tastiest peas. I love these. They take about 70 to 90 days to harvest. They can handle a couple of a light frost. What's tricky about these is that they just do not love heat. Okay, that they won't even germinate right now. If I planted these outside, they probably wouldn't germinate. So peas can be a little tricky timing, so do your research on those. But I'm going to be starting peas like that, and I'm going to also be starting a couple more beds of carrots. I have carrots growing. Those will come to harvest here pretty soon, and then I will immediately go back with several beds of carrots that I will grow into the fall, and then they will be able to just hang out in my garden soil well after a frost. Even if the tops die off, the carrots themselves will be preserved in the soil, and I'll just be able to go out there and pick out the ones that I need each day, and so my soil will kind of act like as a natural root cellar of sorts for my carrots. And I have planted a few extra potatoes, 1 bed of potatoes, that you can also do this with. Any root vegetable, you can kind of leave them underground and let the soil be a natural root cellar of sorts, as long as you don't get your soil doesn't freeze, like a hard freeze. All right, the next thing I'm going to be starting, and these do take quite a while, can take up to 120 days to come to harvest, and that is some different types of onions from seed. And what I'll actually do is I will plant these out. I'm going to start them from seed, transplant the onion sprouts, let them grow, and then they will actually, I'll cover them with leaf mulch or whatever. If they haven't come to harvest by the time it gets cold out, I can just overwinter these, and they will, as soon as it starts to get warm enough next spring, they will just start growing again, and I'll get a really nice early crop of onions. Then, if I don't get any in the fall, which I always pick some green onions at the very least. Okay, the next thing that I am going to be starting is all sorts of leafy greens, and I thought I have more over here, but we will talk about some of these. Okay, so right now my lettuces have all bolted. My kale has gotten demolished by critters, like bugs, so I'm not getting a lot of leafy greens at the moment. So I'm going to be starting back with a whole new round of different types of leafy greens. And leafy greens love the cool weather in fall. Some of these will carry over well into the winter. Starting Paris Island lettuce, which is a type of romaine. I'm going to start some New Zealand spinach. Spinach will hold up really well into the winter time, especially with a row cover of any sort. It'll do fine. Iceberg lettuce. That's another Paris Island. Bloomsdale long-standing spinach. And I also have some curled kale and turnip greens and mustard greens. All of those greens, and Swiss chard, rainbow Swiss chard. All of those will be take up a majority of my fall space. It'll give us all sorts of tasty greens to get us through winter that are high in all of the vitamins, nutrients that you need most during winter time. So that will be the majority of my garden will be brassicas and leafy greens. And then just for fun, we'll have some pumpkins, and I'll also have lots of peas and bush beans because I know that they'll do well. I'll just have a few of the other things. And I will also be saving space to plant garlic, but that won't be until November. But I just have to remember to save a spot for my garlic because I will plant that late into the fall season. So you can tell just by what little bit I've said here, and there's many other things that you can plant. These are just the things that we enjoy eating and what I will be planting myself. So I just wanted to show you that there's a lot of things that you can come back with as you harvest. Maybe pull up a zucchini plant, consider refilling that spot with something else, another crop, so that space isn't wasted and you will end up with twice the harvest that you would have if you hadn't planted and planned for fall planting. Okay, so the last thing that I want to talk to you about is seed germination rates for fall planting, okay? And so I always just say sometimes you just got to think like the plant that you're wanting to grow. It's a really simple mindset of, if you want to grow tomatoes, do a little research on where tomatoes come from, where are they native to, what do tomatoes like, and then think like that. And that's going to help you grow your seeds and your transplants and how to care for them. Tomatoes love warm weather, and their seeds are going to germinate best in a really warm setting. So let's take that over to think about fall and cool weather crops. And just as the name suggests, they love cool weather, and that's when their seeds are going to germinate best, is in a cooler temperature. So right now, today, it's 96 degrees out. If I just carry my brassica seeds out to my garden and I plant them, my germination rates are going to be very poor, and the plants themselves are going to struggle so much in the heat. Those tiny little transplants, they're not even going to have a chance. It's just too hot, and it's going to get even hotter in August. So this is what you have to do for many of your fall planting seeds. Brassicas like cauliflower, broccoli, cabbages, Brussels sprouts, those especially you're going to need, kale and spinach, you're going to need to start those seeds indoors where temperatures are around 70 to 75, 80 degrees at most. Start them under grow lights and let them go ahead and get a nice head start growing inside in more controlled temperatures where they will do better and they'll be safe and away from pests. And then by the time they're big enough to transplant, it's going to be getting into September where and they're going to be big, healthy, able to withstand a little bit of heat. You'll harden those off for a few days and then you can move them out into your garden. So seeds that need to be started indoors right now, if you're going to have them for fall, are going to be your brassicas, like I just mentioned. They're, I think that your leafy greens are really going to do best if you start them indoors, or if you start them like under a shade tree, just somewhere where they're more protected from the extreme sun. Let's see, what else? Onions would do best. They're going to germinate the best if you start them indoors. And these peas are probably going to do best if you start them indoors, but you need to start your peas in really deep containers because the roots do not like to be disturbed. And that way, the roots aren't disturbed when you transplant them. Things that you can go ahead and sow directly into your garden, even right now, are going to be the things like the bush beans and let's see here, the cucumbers, and something else I didn't talk about. Now that is radishes and beets. So these both come to harvest pretty quickly, 60 days or less, and so you can get multiple sowings of beets and radishes. You can start those indoors or outdoors. Either way, they'll do fine. You can start those pumpkin seeds outdoors right now. And your carrot seeds, those would, if I were going to start my carrot seed outdoors right now, I think I would start them either in the shade, or I would create a bit of shade, like a little shade cloth over the spot where I was starting those seeds, because they don't love extremely hot soil temperatures either, so your germination rates just might not be as high if you start your carrot seeds right now. But you can try. What you can't really do is start carrot seed. You cannot start carrot seeds indoors and transplant them. That does not work. So that is the basics on starting your fall seeds. If it is a cool weather crop, my advice would be to start those seeds indoors, with the exception of probably carrots. And for any other crop that is just going to be a second planting of something you've already grown, like beans or squash, you can go ahead and direct sow those seeds, okay? I hope this has helped you, and I really want to encourage you, if you've never tried planting a fall garden, to give it a try this year, even if it's just a few plants, just to see if you like it. A lot of things that are grown in the fall garden people will say they do not like spinach or kale or cauliflower or whatever, and the reason why you may think that you don't like them is because of the taste. But I want to encourage you that if you grow your own and you harvest them once it's cool out, the taste is going to be phenomenal, way better than store-bought, much sweeter and crispier. And so even if you've tried to grow kale or spinach in a springtime garden and then you've harvested once it's gotten very warm out, that taste is not going to be the same as those same crops planted in the fall and then harvested when it's cooler out and there's more, the sugar content's going to be better, and it's just going to be way better tasting. So I want to encourage you, grow that fall garden this year. Give it a try. And I think that you will love it. Fall gardening is actually my favorite time to garden. There's less pests, there's less weeds, it's cooler out, and on days like today, man, makes me miss the fall garden even more because it is hot out. It makes it much more enjoyable to go out and work in your garden when it is 70 degrees out instead of 96 degrees out. So, alright, I hope this has helped you guys. And if you have any questions about anything I've just said, leave me that question below. And if you are new here and you have not subscribed yet, subscribe. I'm going to be doing several videos on seed saving soon. And don't forget to like this video if it helped you out. Thank you guys. Have a good day. Bye.